Hi there. So if you've watched my channel and you've seen a lot of videos about the best vlogging camera and which one you should get, I usually recommend the one I'm looking into right now, which is the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. I use it for vlogging. I also use it in a studio environment because it is that flexible. It is a very good camera to use. It is the best bang for your buck. However, if the weather is not so good, I usually say either get the Action 5 Pro or the Action 4 because they still connect to the DJI Mic 2, and you'll get a good vlogging experience with these cameras as well. They do pretty good in low light. If you're just starting out, then do what I did, start with your smartphone and go from there. As you build your channel or find out if people are interested in you, then start buying more gear as you move on with your YouTube experience. Now, there is one thing that is missing, and it is something that you can't get with the DJI Osmo Pocket 3, and it is something that you can't get with the smaller action cameras when it comes to vlogging. Now, what am I talking about? Well, if I've got your curiosity piqued on this one, then keep watching because you're watching Blue Collar Guy. Okay, we're back. So what exactly am I talking about now? If you're vlogging and you want to capture some B-roll footage, something that isn't exactly close and you need to zoom in on it, if you have a smartphone, you may be able to use the telephoto lens of a smartphone and get in that way. However, it's not going to give you the best possible zoom, and you're not going to get the clearest or stabilized image that you could get if you went with another type of system. I did look into some telephoto lenses for the Sony ZVE10, and I did mention that if you're into interchangeable lenses, then the Sony ZVE10 is the best bang for your buck. I have one. I'm going to switch now so that you can see what that looks like. And here I am on the Sony ZVE10. This is the kit lens, and you can put other lenses on it. Now, I do have Canon lenses, and I do have an adapter so I can put Canon lenses on the Sony ZVE10, but it doesn't work too good with telephoto lenses like the 70-300. The rolling shutter is so bad that it will actually look like spaghetti noodles on the screen. It is absolutely horrible. So what exactly are we going to do about this problem with the zoom? So this is a 70-200 Sony G Master lens, but it's not a true G Master because if you look at the G, it is not orange in color. The ones that are orange in color are usually the better of the two lenses. They're weather sealed, they have everything on them. This one has steady shot either on or off. It's got two different modes. I know that the G Master has 3 different modes, and so this is one step below that one, and as you can tell, it is $1,499. This is the G Master version of the other lens. It has 3 different optical stabilization settings, and this one would give you the best optical stabilization. Now, what is the difference between this lens and the other lens that we looked at before? Is it would be a weather sealed lens, and it also has the ability to zoom without the lens extending. So I'm just going to come back to me for a second. So on a typical zoom lens, and I'm just going to grab my camera bag really fast. Okay, so this is a telephoto lens. This one is made by Canon. This is a 300. If I take the lens and I zoom, do you see how it pops in and out? So with the G Master lens, it doesn't do that. The length of the lens is all that happens. What are the advantages of that? Well, you're not going to have balance issues. Let's say you put it on a gimbal that could hold that much weight. If you take this and you start to zoom in and out, you're going to affect the balance of your gimbal, and it's going to throw your gimbal off, and things can just get really wonky at that point. So that lens I showed you was $3,500. That's a lot of money, and that is more than I could possibly afford. And to stick a $3,500 lens on a Sony ZVE10 that is less than $1,000 seems like a really crazy idea. But I'm not going to recommend that. I do have a solution, and I'm glad that you've been waiting for this, because it's a decent solution. This is a bridge camera, and I'm just going to undo this. And there are two companies that make decent bridge cameras. One is Sony and one is Panasonic. One is better for photos and one is better for video. One has a stack sensor, one has a non-stack sensor. This one is the Panasonic FZ2500. I believe this camera came out in the year 2018. Yeah, I'm not kidding. It's an older camera. Now I want to show you something. I'm going to turn the camera on. So this is what the lens does when it's fully extended. Now here's the kicker. If I zoom in and out, it doesn't change the length of the lens, meaning that if I stuck this on a gimbal, I could balance it just like that $3,500 lens. And what if I told you I got this whole camera for less than $1,000? What if I told you I got this whole camera for less than $900? What if I told you I got this whole camera with this little selfie pole for less than $900? What if I told you I got this whole camera and this Godox flash that would cost you another $100 that still has, and I'm just going to show you something really quick here, because I'm going to pull it off in front of you. There's the seal, okay, with the camera for less than $900. What if I told you that I got a memory card with the camera for less than $900? What if I told you that the shutter count on this camera was so low that it's basically a new camera for less than $900? And what if I told you that you can also get one of these cameras for, well, maybe not for that good of a price, but for less than $1,400, brand new? You wouldn't get all these other accessories, of course, but you get what I'm saying with this. So we're going to talk about this camera because as far as zoom goes, the zoom on this camera is 480 millimeters, and it also gets even better when you put it in 4K video. I think it's around 600 when it's in video, because when you crop things in, it naturally puts a zoom in there, but you don't lose any image quality. So what's up with this camera? Well, this camera also has built-in ND filters for less than $900 that I paid. even has automatic ND filters, meaning if I leave it on auto, it'll just figure out which ND filter I need. It has a built-in flippy screen. I can change the metering mode. Here's the screen. Yeah, touch sensitive screen. Eye detect on the eyepiece. So if I cover this, you see how the screen just shut off? And now the screen goes back. It does that automatically if you put your eyes up to the eyepiece, which, by the way, it also has an electronic EVF for less than $900. You would be hard pressed to find value in another lens even that could perform as good as this entire camera could. There are some drawbacks, and I'm going to get into what those drawbacks are. But for the price, and that's what my channel's about, is getting you the best bang for your buck. And because I'm not sponsored, and because people, you know, nobody sent me this for free or whatever, I can tell you what's really going on as far as what I think you should do if you want to go that route. So if you're looking for a zoom option and you want to take photos and 4K video, and by the way, this is a 4K camera, it also will do 422 10-bit if you send it out through the HDMI to like an Atomos Ninja, and you want to color grade it that way. So you would have to get one of those. You could probably find one of those on the used market and do that. If you just decide to do it internal, it would be an 8-bit 420 8-bit, which is also good. You can shoot in black and white. You can shoot in with the cinematic. It's got Vlog in the camera. It has all kinds of features, this camera. There are so many, I could probably spend an hour just going over the features. There are other videos linked to this camera. So the model of this camera, just in case I didn't tell you earlier, it is the Panasonic FZ2500. And yes, I'm Canadian, so that's why I said Z. And I'm just going to turn it off. So the only time that lens extends is when you turn it on, and it fully extends. The zoom is internal. That's a big advantage because when you're zooming in and out, if you're filming video, you won't hear any motor noise of you zooming in and out, which is something that only more expensive lenses like the one that I showed you have. Because if you're zooming in and out of, let's say, some wildlife, or you want to get that really awesome squirrel footage, that's something that you're going to want to have. Sony makes a really good bridge camera too, and it is called the RX10 Mark IV. But before I get to that one, I'm going to go, let me just look up this one and show you what it would cost you brand new. It's an old camera, but they still have some in the boxes. So the other thing about this camera, while we're doing that, is that it has two forms of stabilization. It has electronic, and it also has stabilization in the lens as well. So it has two. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the screen. So this is the best price you could probably get it at. It's $1,434. Here, oh, here's one here for $1,349. So it has an f2.8 to 4.5 lens. And I'm just going to see if, yeah, oh yeah, it's also got a built-in flash. I guess I neglected that. And flippy screen. And that's pretty much it on the pictures. I thought maybe there was an introductory video on that. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to me. Okay, so on the side you also have preset buttons like function buttons. You have 3 here, you have 1 up here, you have 1 in the back. You have different types of autofocus on here as well. This is the flash, the built-in flash. Let me just, there we go. That's the built-in flash. That just pops down like so. And this is, it's got continuous burst for taking photos. This is a 1-inch sensor camera. Okay? Now I want you to remember that, because a 1-inch sensor video camera is very expensive. If you were to get a 1-inch sensor camcorder, you'd be looking at close to $3,000 Canadian. Yes, oh yeah. The most sensors in camcorders are 1/2.5, and they're going for roughly $1,300, $1,400 Canadian. So in lower light, this is going to do a much better job in low light. So it's a 1-inch sensor. I want you to think about this. This is a 1-inch sensor bridge camera with roughly 600 millimeters of zoom, give or take the crop. So let's just call it 480 for what the lens says. So let's just say you got a 480 millimeter crop lens, shoots in 4K 30, okay? 8-bit or 10-bit if you use the HDMI out to an Atomos Ninja and record externally. You can color grade the footage because you can put Vlog in this camera. You can shoot in many different profiles. So it's not a new camera. That's the thing. It is just an underrated camera. So a lot of times when cameras come out, people ooh and ah over them, and then they forget about them. And then the next thing comes out, and then the next thing comes out. So what are the things that you would use this camera for? So you would use this camera for any time that you needed a zoom application. So if you're going to an event, and like or a hockey game or something like that, and you needed to zoom in and you wanted something that was optically stabilized, this would be a good camera for that. And given the fact that I can buy a whole camera for what it would cost me for a lens, and I know that a lot of people are screaming at their TVs or their phones right now saying, but it's not APS-C, it is not a full frame camera with the lens. Yes, you're absolutely right. You are going to get better image quality out of that setup after you spend $3,500 for your lens and then another $3,000 or $4,000 for the camera that would best suit that lens. The Sony ZVE10 is not the camera, by the way, for those lenses. You would want something more along the lines of the Sony A9 III that has a global shutter. And incidentally, Panasonic made global shutter on video cameras a while ago. Yeah, I'm not kidding. I looked at one. I think it was called the P2 or something like that. Yeah, it wasn't, other than that, it wasn't a very good camera, but it had global shutter. So global shutter is nothing new. I know that they've tried to rebrand it as, hey, this is new. Global shutter's been here before. And this camera, I don't believe has global shutter, but it is a video-centric camera, meaning that it takes really good video. And the only, you know, it's got some disadvantages. It weighs 2 pounds, but the lens for the other cameras would also weigh between 2 and 2.5 pounds on the lens alone without the camera. So all things considered, this is a lot more compact. Think about that $3,500 and think about $1,300, and I showed you lenses that alone would go for $1,300. The other advantage of going to this route is now I've freed up my other camera to do other things. For instance, I can put a different lens on my Sony ZVE10 and take a wide angle shot, or I can take a different perspective shot, because I didn't just tie up the camera with this other lens, I freed it up. And if you're thinking, okay, 1-inch sensor, the other zoom cameras, by the way, if you look at the Nikon P1000, it has a tiny 1/2.3-inch sensor, which is about the size of your smartphone sensor. So this camera, by the way, if you're thinking of, well, what about my Samsung smartphone? It can do zoom, but it's got a tiny 1/2.5-inch sensor thereabouts, maybe even smaller, because it has to fit everything into this little thin little case here. And this has the same size sensor as the Pocket 3. And as you know, the Pocket 3 with its 1-inch sensor, it is a good size. 1-inch sensor is kind of that sweet spot. It's right around the micro 4/3 area. And a lot of people have compared the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 with its 1-inch sensor to like full frame cameras as far as image quality goes. They've actually put them side by side and said, listen, we can't really spot the difference. So in my opinion, the 1-inch sensor is not a bad word when it comes to these type of cameras. I specifically wanted a 1-inch sensor in this camera. If you want to go with a smaller sensor in this, they do make an FZ80D, and make sure you get the D and not just the FZ80, and it has a smaller 1/2.5-inch sensor, and it has an equivalent to 1200, yes, 1200 millimeter zoom, and in 4K mode it'll actually go to 1600 millimeters, and you can pick up one of those for brand new $700, or on the used market I've seen them as cheap as $500. Yeah, you can get one of those. I wanted this one because it had the built-in ND filters, it had a lot more features, it is a higher quality camera, it also has the flippy screen. The FZ80D does not. This is going to give me the reach that I need. Again, I'm going to leave links for other videos. Maybe I'll put them on the end screen, and then that way when you're done watching this video, they'll pop up and then you'll see what I'm getting at. But these older cameras have everything that you need. They've got a microphone input, and by the way, it's also got wind noise reduction. Oh yeah, it's got wind noise reduction. They also have HDMI outs. Of course, I already told you that. They have headphone jacks. They have USB. Now, that's the only other thing, is it has a micro USB instead of USB-C, and that's just because of the age. USB-C didn't come out till after a few years after that, and then it became more popular. So at the time, micro USB was the in thing. Now, the other thing too I'd like to point out is the SD card slot is on the side, just like a professional camera. It's not on the bottom, okay? It's not on the bottom, it's on the side. I know, that's crazy. It almost looks like you could put, they had room for 2 slots. I think they were thinking about that because it's wide enough. They just put 1 though. And it even has a remote control jack. So if you wanted to get a remote control for it, you can get 2 different kinds. You can get the kind where you just hit the button and it triggers the shutter. So if you didn't want to move the camera or jostle it, if you're fully zoomed in, And it also has, you can get the digital kind that's wireless or wired, it doesn't matter. So the one part hooks into the camera with a wire, and then you have the other part in your hand, and then you can have the I think it's called an intervalometer. This is for like time lapse or things like that. You can shoot. Let me pull one up to show you. Okay, so this is the remote, and you can get one. They're having one on a Black Friday special, I think, for $66. So it comes in two parts, and if you look at it, it's got a built-in, see, and it even says there that it will work with the FZ2500. And you can set timers. You can have continuous shooting. You can set it for selfies. You got 4 modes of shutter release: instant single shooting, delayed shoots, delayed long interval, you name it. So you can control your shooting with that. So that's the remote. That's one of the remotes. If you want to get the cheaper one, there's a cheaper one here. There's $20, $21, but this is a wireless wired one, and you can get them fairly inexpensive. This camera was ahead of its time, I think. It definitely offers, you know, I originally just wanted a zoom camera because I had no zoom on my Pocket 3, and to get, like I said, to get the lens for the Sony ZVE10 was ridiculously expensive. So I think that if you are either a small YouTuber or you're someone that just likes to shoot video, you could not go wrong with something like this. It's going to give you decent image quality with the 1-inch sensor. It's going to give you the zoom you want, and it's going to come at a price that it was, you know, that is reasonable. So what are the things that I don't like about this camera? Well, it weighs 2 pounds. It's not light, and it's big. It's a lot bigger than a mirrorless camera by a lot. It feels a lot like a DSLR. It feels a lot like a DSLR with a telephoto lens bolted onto it. It feels very comfortable though, like my Canon. I have a Canon DSLR. It feels a lot like that. But it doesn't feel like it's 2016 technology. It feels a lot more modern than that, which tells me that it was really ahead of its time. The other thing that I don't like about it is the focusing. Okay, so this uses a contrast-based focusing. And if you don't know what that means, it means it's looking for lights versus darks when it's focusing. And the disadvantage to contrast-based focusing is it can miss focus. So contrast-based focusing is not as good as phase detect focusing. So Sony cameras use phase detect focusing. However, okay, and you're going to love this, the Sony RX10 Mark IV, the competition to this one, also has contrast-based focusing. Yeah, the same type of focusing system. Most camcorders, by the way, do not have phase detect autofocus. So if you're thinking, well, I'll get a camcorder, it'll be better. No, they use contrast-based focusing as well. And because camcorders are not that popular anymore, because smartphones are kind of taking the place of camcorders for things that are close anyway, contrast-based autofocus systems are still in place on those cameras. Now, Canon does make a camera that is kind of like a hybrid where it's dual pixel autofocus. It's about $4,000. Yeah, it's expensive. It also has a 1-inch sensor. So a camcorder with these features is going to be $500 to $1,000 more used. Yeah, they have similar stabilization systems, but maybe this doesn't have as good of a stabilization system as a camcorder would. Plus, camcorders, you hold them in a different way, which adds to that stabilization. It's because ergonomically, you're going to hold it in a much more stabilized manner. So anyways, take care, be safe at work, and I will see you at the next video because I've got some more exciting stuff coming. Bye.